All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're deconstructing the fourth chapter of Deuteronomy. Now, this is so much more than just a list of ancient rules. Think of it as this passionate, crucial speech given right on the edge of a new era. It's basically a blueprint for how to build a nation founded on law, on memory, and on the really high stakes consequences of what happens when you forget.
And the text opens with this incredibly powerful command. I mean, right from the get-go, the authority is absolute. This isn't some rough draft or a list of helpful suggestions. The law is being presented as a perfect, complete system. The message is crystal clear. You don't get to tamper with it. You can't add your own bright ideas, and you can't just ignore the parts you don't like. That one sentence really sets the tone for everything else that's about to follow.
So, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at how these laws are framed as a covenant for life. Then, we're going to dig into the huge danger of forgetting. After that, we'll unpack the idea of a God who is heard but not seen, see how these laws actually work in a new land, and finally, wrap up with the command to create a lasting legacy of memory.
Okay, first up, the core promise. The text argues that these laws aren't supposed to be burdens. No, they're the very foundation for survival. It's framed as this direct deal. You follow these laws, and in return, you will live and you will prosper. It's actually a pretty radical idea, this notion that a nation's success is directly tied to its legal and moral integrity.
And the choice here couldn't be more stark. I mean, look at this. It's totally black and white. There is no middle ground. One path gets you life, land, and wisdom. The other, destruction, exile, total ruin. The stakes are being framed as completely existential, and that's on purpose. It's meant to grab your full attention and command your loyalty. And, this wasn't just about keeping their own house in order. These laws were also a kind of foreign policy. The goal was to build a society so just, so wise, that it would become a source of pride on the world stage. The legal system itself was meant to be a beacon, something that would make other nations look on and say, wow, now that is a great nation. All right, let's move on to what is really the central conflict of this whole chapter. So if following the law leads to life, then the single biggest danger has to be forgetting that law. And forgetting, in this context, isn't just a simple slip of the mind. It's presented as an active choice, a step toward corruption and self-destruction, specifically through the act of idolatry. So the text basically asks this critical question. When you think about all the possible threats a new nation could face, war, famine, rival kingdoms, what does this foundational speech say is the number one absolute biggest risk to their existence? And the answer is pretty telling. The greatest danger isn't an army at the gates, it's an enemy within. The ultimate threat is self-corruption, and it's defined very clearly as making an idol. This act is positioned as the ultimate betrayal of the covenant, a rejection of the very thing their entire society is supposed to be built on. And the prohibition gets incredibly specific. They lay out this whole comprehensive list of what's off limits. You've got human forms, land animals, birds, things that crawl, fish, even the sun, the moon, and the stars. The message is simple. You cannot worship anything that has been created. It puts the creator in a completely separate, untouchable category.
In this slide just perfectly illustrates the main argument against idols. On one side, you have a God who's described as being near, as being accessible, someone who actually hears you when you pray. And on the other side, you have these man-made things of wood and stone, which are described as totally lifeless. They can't see, they can't hear, they can't eat or smell. The text is basically asking, why on earth would you trade a living, merciful God for a block of wood?
So why? What's the reason for this intense focus on avoiding physical images? Well, the answer is tied to a single defining historical event. The entire ban on idolatry is anchored in the collective memory of what happened at Mount Horeb. This is so much more than a suggestion. It's a command to burn a memory into the nation's DNA. Remember the Day is an instruction to constantly bring to mind a shared foundational experience. This isn't supposed to be some dusty old history. It's a living memory that's meant to shape every single decision, now and in the future. And the text paints this vivid, honestly terrifying picture. You've got a mountain on fire, blazing up to the sky, surrounded by black clouds and deep darkness. And then, out of that fire, a voice speaks and delivers the 10 Commandments. It's this overwhelming sensory experience, basically engineered to be unforgettable. And right here, this is it. This is the theological linchpin of the entire chapter. It's the crucial point. When the ultimate revelation happened, what did they experience? A voice. And what do they not see? Any kind of physical form. The logic is so simple and direct. You can't make an image of God because you've never ever seen one. To create an idol would be to literally invent a lie. The text really drives home just how unique this whole experience was. They're framing it as something that has never happened before in all of human history. This direct encounter with a formless voice isn't just some small theological detail. It's the very core of their identity as a nation. It's the inheritance that sets them apart from everybody else.
Okay, so let's bring this down from the clouds a bit. How does all this high-level theology translate into an actual legal code? Well, the text doesn't just stay in the abstract. It grounds these principles in concrete laws for the new land. We get a real glimpse of justice in practice.
And here's a fascinating example: the city of Refuge. This was a special provision for someone who killed another person by accident. This shows a surprisingly sophisticated legal mind at work, one that can tell the difference between premeditated murder and unintentional manslaughter. It's a system built not just on revenge, but on principles like intent and due process.
And this wasn't just some idea they talked about. No, the law was immediately put into practice. You can see right here, 3 specific cities, Bezer, Ramos, and Golan, are designated, each assigned to a different tribe. This is the law moving from an abstract idea to a concrete geographical political reality. Justice is literally being mapped onto the land, making sure that safety and due process are real, accessible parts of life.
So if you have a history this important and a legal code this vital, how do you make sure it survives? The text answer is clear. You have a profound duty to pass it on. The entire system is designed to be handed down from one generation to the next.
And the process is laid out in 4 clear steps. It starts with personal responsibility. Watch yourselves. You have to guard your own memory first. Then you have to teach it all to your children and make sure they teach it to their children. It's like a chain of memory where every single generation is a vital link. If just one link breaks, the whole legacy is at risk.
And why? Why is this chain of memory so absolutely vital? Well, the text brings us right back to where we started, back to that initial promise. This relentless act of remembering and teaching isn't just about preserving the past, it's about securing the future. The survival and the prosperity of all the generations to come is tied directly to how well they carry out this one task. So, we end with this question. The 4th chapter of Deuteronomy offers one answer. You do it through absolute law, through the vivid memory of a shared foundational event, and through a strict command to teach the next generation. But it's a timeless challenge, one that every single society faces. How do we figure out what our most crucial truths are and then build a system to make sure they outlive us? That's definitely something to think about.